base that he had in Washington, D.C. And after that, so he told this story about how when he was in the Marines, he was in the jungles of Asia, and he came across some type of secret operation with this 300-foot, UFO-looking type of craft, and they were loading people onto it, and he thought it was some type of, or they were loading. He didn't see what they were loading onto it, but he thought it was some type of like drug smuggling operation. You'll hear us go into all this, but he saw them using this technology of like a UFO. And he thought, well, we're using some type of, futuristic technology, some type of reverse engineered tech. And he came later to find out that they weren't loading drugs, they were loading people onto this UFO. And that's really where things kind of picked up in Michael Herrera's story. He came back. He's been on my show twice. The last time he was on was in October of 2023. And Mike spoke about being taken to a secret location from an insider, as he called him. And we found out who that insider was. And if you don't know the history of that, you're also going to hear that in this episode. So stay tuned if you don't know who Michael Herrera's insider was. But this insider, I won't spoil the surprise, this insider took Mike to an undisclosed location, a facility where they were performing, or where they do perform, psionic experiments. And they bring people who have psionic abilities or who are wanting to learn psionic abilities to come into contact with NHI and their craft. So his claim on my show back then was that there was some real shady stuff happening with this, and that in fact people were dying who in some cases, they couldn't handle the rigorous training or the rigorous techniques that were used in order to gain these psionic abilities. And that's a pretty big claim to make, an extreme claim to make, but that's a claim that Mike made on my show a year and a half ago. And since then, a lot has happened in this area. Jake Barber came out. Jake Barber talked about psionics with Ross Coulthart, and of course the egg-shaped UFO. But for me, that was the least of that story. That's just my opinion. So since then, we have found out that Mike Herrera and Jake Barber are actually working together. And Jake Barber reached out to Mike Herrera while Mike had come out with his story and was waiting to become a whistleblower himself. And of course, we know about Jake Barber at this point as far as being the latest whistleblower and recovering the egg-shaped UFO and having a psychic connection to it and having the Skywatcher group and trying to gain, using people with psionic abilities to gain communication with these craft and their occupants. So that's kind of the backstory about this discussion that you're about to hear and how this all comes together, how Jake Barber and Michael Herrera came together, and what that means for this overarching discussion of people with psionic abilities, how they're being used, and how they're being acquired, and how they're being taught these abilities. So there's a lot that goes into this. As you can see, it was a longer discussion, but we really went in a lot of different facets and sidewalks here as we were putting all the pieces together. And credit to Joey's Not My Name. I asked some pretty tough questions, and he wasn't shy about trying to answer them as best as he could with some pretty heavy topics. And also something you're going to hear in this interview is really a couple of stories. I don't even remember now. I think it was one or two. I know at least one for sure. A story that I have never spoken about before, at least to my recollection. And if I have, then you can remind me that, hey, Stephen, you did speak about this, so on episode whatever, and maybe I forgot. But there is an instance during this conversation with myself and Joey, so to speak, that I relayed a story about Michael Herrera, what Mike told me off the air one time, and I had never spoken about it on the air or anywhere, actually, for that matter, until right now. And I bring that up during the conversation between myself and Joey. So really fascinating stuff. How does this all connect with some of the deeper discussions about, how people are being brought in? There's some tough questions that need to be asked. And we get into all of that here during this discussion on UAP episode 109. So without any further ado, here's myself with Joey Is Not My Name, and then stick around after this for some final thoughts before we're all done. But for now, here's the interview. Enjoy. Here we go. First time he's ever been on the show. We've heard his name a lot, but that was the first time he's on. Joey is not my name. Welcome to UAP. Thanks for making the time to come on here today for the Unidentified Alien Podcast.
Yeah, this is weird because like usually I'm on the listener side of the podcast, and so you become like hyper aware of like the handful of responses to that, intro, thanks for having me, it's an honor, that, so I'm like, I don't want to just like repeat those cliche things, but we'll just start there. It is an honor actually to be here, because like I said, I'm typically a listener, so. Thanks, Stephen.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. I always, anybody who makes the time to either listen or write a message or come on as a guest, I'm always super appreciative of that. And so I'm happy to have you today. And, you and I have actually spoken in the past before privately, but never on the show. And we've connected because we had a common contact in Michael Herrera. So we're going to get into the enigma of Michael Herrera a little bit today. And some of the things that surround him and Jake Barber, how did they get connected? What was your knowledge through that as far as what was happening behind the scenes? So let me start there a little bit, because I think that's how people know you a little bit. And we say, you go as Joey is not my name, but I'm going to call you Joey because that's the name people see. So it's a little ironic. So you kind of are known as this, Michael Herrera insider a little bit. You guys have formulated a relationship over the past couple of years. He's confiding you with a couple of different things, and you kind of came across some different information that I think we're kind of seeing play out now with Jake Barber. So what did you know about the Jake Barber situation before he actually came out with Ross Coulthart?
Okay, so let's knock me down a few rungs here. So at this point, my inside knowledge that you allege I have is essentially all public. All of the information that, Michael Herrera has been talking about over the past couple of years that has been, told to him by Jake, it's all public. So I don't really have any, I would say the extent of my knowledge that I can't share publicly, I guess, would be, small bits of corroboration and, certain, minor evidence to just support a few different things. But by all means, I have no evidence of any of the extraordinary claims that have been made. So I just want to make that clear so people aren't trying to read into like, the things I say or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I basically just started, my whole kind of interaction with Michael Herrera just kind of started as I was a Redditor. I was following the topic. Michael came forward. I did an article. I made a post on Reddit, just basically digging into some of the stuff he said about the operation that he stumbled upon. And, I from there reached out to Michael, and with the intention of trying to further investigate his Indonesia experience. And we started chatting and texting and going back and forth, and eventually that led to him telling me about this insider who wanted to meet him in person. And so I was just kind of going along with that whole process as that unfolded. And eventually, I got to a point where I realized he wasn't lying about that. And the way I was able to determine that, and what ultimately led to me reaching out to you back in, I think that was 2023, a couple of years ago, was a photograph that Michael had shared with me that showed him sitting in a helicopter with a Glock in his lap. And, there's some backstory to that situation, but the key thing was the tail number of the helicopter was on the dashboard, and you had to kind of like zoom in to see it. And so once I saw that, I was able to track where the helicopter went. I also authenticated the photo a number of different ways, geolocating, by looking, through the windshield and seeing what's in the background, and being able to verify the helicopter was where it was, where Michael said it was, and all of that. And so this whole thing made me realize that Michael, at the very least, isn't lying about meeting someone and being flown out to a facility. This was kind of this evolution of his story. First it was Indonesia, and then all of a sudden he's got this insider and he's being flown out to a facility, and people just kind of wrote that off as like, that's totally nuts. He's like making up stuff and adding stuff to his story. But I knew that part was true. And so, when I reached out to you, I just wanted to convey that, that proof, and just so you would know that, like, okay, he's at least being truthful about this one thing, and then you could have a conversation from there.
Yeah, and that really is something that I'm glad we got to do, because look, I mean, let's face it, a lot of the claims that Michael Herrera has made, whether it was talking to me privately or on the show, or to you privately, or anything he said in any other interview, a lot of people have a hard time believing what he has said, because it's some of the most fantastic things that people have heard when it comes to claims about UFOs or psionics, whatever it might be. So it was pretty huge to get that corroboration when you and I did get to speak, which, I mean, that led me down a path of like, man, a lot of this stuff could really be happening, and that was a scary thought. I mean, did you go through something similar?
Well, I have always approached this this entire thing kind of compartmentalizing each thing. So I started from the basics, like, okay, was Michael a Marine? Was he in Indonesia like he said he was? Was the operation that he was on in Indonesia accurately portrayed by him? And so I've always tried to, start from the basics, build up from there, and just leave everything else on the shelf that I personally don't have any experience or evidence of. And I mean, I'm still in that situation. I don't have any evidence of the psionic stuff. I don't have any evidence of a 300-foot UFO. But the claims that he's making are too important to just dismiss, in my opinion. And everything that I've looked into so far regarding him has, when I've had enough data and corroboration and evidence and to validate, everything has checked out. So I don't think we really need to. I think, it's a natural tendency for everybody, whenever a new whistleblower comes forward, or a new case or a new story or whatever, we want to form a binary opinion kind of as soon as we hear the story. And it's really hard to do that with ufology, because we're talking about some really extraordinary stuff, And so I think it's important to be okay with not having all the answers, even if in this case, it's, we're 2 years into it, and to just, have an open mind, and just keep pursuing that evidence.
That said, and I think that is well said, by the way, because it's very true. We all expect so many things to be given right now. A lot of us expect instant gratification when it comes to some of these topics that come up, and unfortunately, it's just not that easy. Especially with some of the recent stuff that has come up with Jake Barber, a name I mentioned earlier. What did you know about Jake Barber before he came out, and what was your reaction when you saw him come out with Ross on News Nation?
Well, I was. I mean, there's quite a bit, and honestly, again, if people want to know a lot more about Jake Barber, they should go back to all the interviews that Michael has done over the past 2 years and listen to what Michael says about this insider that he's been talking to, because that insider is Jake Barber.
That was him.
Okay. So
Was Jake flying the helicopter? Do we know that, or is that?
that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
So the famous helicopter incident that apparently was Jake Barber flying Michael Herrera to this secret location where the psionics are being done.
Yeah. And so that's unfortunately part of the reason why even now, so like for the longest time, I wasn't even able to talk about this photograph that Michael had sent me because, I mean, even personally, just my perspective was like, I didn't want Jake to mistrust Michael because obviously he like snapped a picture of himself in this helicopter as he's being flown to this facility, and I don't think Michael told him that right away. I know I've spoken to Michael since then, and he said he talked to him about it, and you know, he understands and everything. But so that's why I was never able to kind of specify how I was able to verify that Michael was flown to this facility. Now, granted, you know, Michael could have taken the picture and then like hopped out of the helicopter, and maybe he wasn't even on the helicopter, right? And like, I don't have evidence of what he saw at the facility. So it's like, it's not that it proves everything or anything extraordinary. It's just obviously pretty telling. But that's, you know, unfortunately I can't share that photo even today because it would reveal the location. It would reveal the location of where that helicopter went, and it's evident that Jake's not, you know, not revealing that as of yet.
Hey guys, it's Steven Diener, and I don't know about you, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. And after years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up from crazy high wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks that actually cost more in the long run. And I finally decided to switch to Mint Mobile. And what I've discovered since then is that I'm still getting fantastic service while paying so much less than it was with the big wireless carriers. It's like a no-brainer. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with the premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. And all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So ditch the overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is here for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/UAP. That's mintmobile.com/UAP. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months.